What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Patrick, aka Addicted to Combat, back for another week of UFC action. And we've got UFC Fight Night Singapore on deck this weekend, featuring a featherweight main event for potentially 5 rounds of violence between former champion Max Holloway as he welcomes back the Korean zombie Chan Sung Jung to the cage. So whenever either of those two men step foot in the cage, can't wait to see it. Probably going to be an instant classic, win or lose. So 13 fights on this Singapore card. Some pretty high-level fights here, some ranked contenders. We've got some recognizable names and faces, and some volatile matchups on the prelims as well. So can't wait to break into it with you guys. I will be back on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Central Time, joined by my friend and returning guest, Johnny K. Picks. We'll trade opinions back and forth with the live chat, give out our bets, and probably try to talk each other onto some additional bets as well. But right now, I've got 4 moneyline bets. I've got a few props, and I'll point out all of those in this video. I also dropped a standalone video on Sunday night for the main event alone, so you can check that out if you want just a longer format for that main event. It's a pretty interesting fight, and yeah, if you're in the United States where I'm at, I'm in the Central Standard Zone, so it'll be 4 a.m. that the first prelim kicks off. So I can't wait to crack open some caffeine, wake up for that at 4 a.m., make some breakfast, whip up some mimosas, and I'll be sober enough to hit the gym by like noon when this fight card ends. So I've got my whole weekend mapped out, as you can tell. Gonna try to make some money, play some good bets. Let's break into the first prelim of the night. First fight of the prelims on Saturday morning is going to be a battle between 2 featherweight strikers in Seungwoo Choi and Yarno Errens. So off the bat, we're seeing Seungwoo Choi is a returning name, making his 9th walk to the UFC cage, but he's currently 3-5 in his 8 performances so far, riding a 3-fight losing streak. So the Korean, very powerful Muay Thai striker Seungwoo Choi, he got knocked out at the end of last year by Mike Trizano in round 1. Last year in, I believe it was at the Singapore card, he faced Josh Kulabau and had his moments, but you know, he got knocked down in a couple of big spots there in 2 different rounds and lost the decision to Josh Kulabau. And then go back all the way to 2021. He was starting off very strong against Bruce Leroy, but ultimately through an illegal strike, Bruce Leroy got his head back into the fight and jumped on Seungwoo Choi's back and choked him out in round 2. So he's finding ways to slip up in all of these fights, and his record is not looking too good at 10-6 these days. So it's really the durability problems from Seungwoo Choi that are kind of giving me red flags at this point. And it's also the fact that when he gets really excited in round 1 and headhunts with that big left hook he's always looking for, he leaves himself very open to getting countered. And I think Yarno Errens might be able to do just that. Yarno Errens is making his 2nd walk to the cage after dropping his debut last year against William Gomez. Yarno Errens is a Dutch kickboxer with a very powerful right cross. He's got some good clinch techniques, and he's got a judo background and some BJJ skills on the mat as well. So both guys here, as primarily strikers, their weakness is going to be a heavy takedown threat. But Seungwoo Choi in his career so far has managed to kind of fix that part of his game and even employ some takedowns of his own from time to time. That would be a good strategy against Yarno Errens, but I suspect we're going to see largely a striking fight here. And where the money line was when I picked this up on Monday, at plus 180 for Yarno Errens, I put 0.75 units on him as an underdog here. So the money line has since changed. Money has come in on that underdog Yarno Errens. Seungwoo Choi is now minus 155, and Yarno Errens is plus 135, the underdog. So where this price is at, I think it's a little bit more accurate, and I would look towards the unders in this fight. The under 2.5 at minus 120 on BetOnline. I like that spot because I do think that there's violence in this fight. But like I said, Seungwoo Choi not taking damage the best these days. And I think Yarno Errens is a calculated striker enough to take advantage of the mistakes that Seungwoo Choi will make early. So I think it's going to be a Yarno Errens knockout. I think it comes under 2.5 rounds, probably under 1.5 rounds. So yeah, give me Errens. Here's an underdog to start off the night. As I mentioned, though, where the money line is at now, I would look towards the unders in this spot more than anything else. Next up at women's flyweight, we've got a battle between J.J. Aldrich and Na Liang. This is a pretty wide money line here. We've got minus 575, the favorite in J.J. Aldrich, and Na Liang is the plus 410 underdog. And this makes total sense to me because Na Liang is just not a UFC caliber fighter. She's making her 3rd walk to the cage, and she's gone 0-2 in her UFC endeavors so far, dropping the ball against Ariane Carnelossi in a very exciting, high-paced round 1. And within like a minute's time, Na Liang got knocked out by Silvana Gomez Juarez the last time she was in the UFC. So she comes from that Chinese promotion, the WLF Wars promotion, and the Chinese fighter Na Liang is pretty much a grappler who tries to run head first at her opponent's legs, get them to the mat, and she can rain down ground and pound and get mount and try to search for a submission. She's got 17 wins, all of them by finish, and she does have 2 additional wins by disqualification as well. But yeah, any fight that she is facing somebody with any sort of positive record or, UFC talent, Bellator talent, she's losing to all of those fighters. Any fight that goes past round 1, she's probably losing that as well. So she's going to look for an early armbar, an early submission, and if she can't get the fight to the mat, she's probably going to run headfirst into some strikes and get knocked out when she gasses out. She has no cardio. So not really a lot of ways she can win this fight against JJ Aldrich, aside from miraculously getting the fight to the mat and locking up a submission within a couple of minutes. So that's really her path to victory. I don't see that happening. JJ Aldrich is 30 years old. She's a southpaw striker, capable of really high output bouts over 3 rounds, and that's really largely how she wins her fights. They're all by decision in the UFC. But she does have the ability to take the fight to the mat herself, rain down ground and pound, and look for submissions herself. Although she doesn't have any on her record, that's definitely a possibility in this fight. She could probably win this fight however she wants, as soon as round 2 starts if it gets there. So give me JJ Aldrich to finally get a finish in the UFC. I think this is a perfect opponent for her to win inside the distance, and I've taken a 1-unit stab on the under 2.5 at minus 185. So that's where I'm at with this one. Maybe I'll look for JJ Aldrich inside the distance if the price is right on the props, but I haven't gotten there yet. So yeah, I think JJ Aldrich is a rightful minus 575 favorite here, but laying that price tag on her just seems like a bad idea. She did drop the ball last time against Ariane Lipski as like a minus 400 favorite. Failed to get any takedowns, but this is a fighter in Na Liang where I think she can manhandle her pretty easily. Welterweight bout up next between Yusaku Kinoshita and Billy Goff. This should be a fun fight for as long as it lasts. Between these two young competitors, we've got the 23-year-old Kinoshita making his second walk to the cage. Billy Goff at 25 is making his very first appearance in the UFC. Both guys scored knockouts on their Contender Series appearances last year. So Billy Goff is only just now making his debut because he had double knee surgery earlier this year in February after suffering 3 meniscus tears at some grappling tournament he was at. So Billy Goff, probably the more well-rounded fighter here. He is a strong striker, an active wrestler, and he's got decent submission skills on the mat, but so far his competition has been pretty light, and even with that, he's shown to be very, very hittable and has to have this comeback sort of quality to his fights, including the fight against Szymon Smitrowski on the Contender Series. He dropped Billy Goff with a head kick in a few seconds of round 1, peppered him up with knees and counters, and eventually Billy Goff waited until Smitrowski got tired and was able to overwhelm him with some close-range striking against the cage, and that's usually the story for a lot of Billy Goff fights. Rather unexperienced, untested. He is 8-2 as a pro with 6 knockouts, but they're not like flatline knockouts. They're like, those spots where he overwhelms people against the cage, standing TKO stoppages, things like that. So, he can take the fight to the mat, shoot a double-leg takedown against the cage, kind of grind out his opponent with ground and pound. But overall, Billy Goff, there's still a lot to learn about this guy. Like I said, 25 years old and now coming off of double knee surgery in a debut. He takes on Yusaku Kinoshita, who's a Japanese counter striker, a southpaw fighter who just dropped his debut earlier this year against Adam Fugit because Fugit was able to, take him to the mat. I think he clipped him with some punches early, took him down and ground and pounded him out with some vicious elbows in round 1. So I did bet against Kinoshita in his debut because the money line was super wide. They really disrespected Adam Fugit, and I got Fugit at like plus 270. So in this spot, I'm taking Kinoshita because his money line right now is minus 126. I put 1.26 units to win 1 backing Kinoshita, who I think is a far slicker striker, has better movement and better timing. It's going to be a battle between Kinoshita's speed, his counter-striking ability, and his distance striking. But if Billy Goff can, make Kinoshita miss, if Billy Goff can end up taking him down and holding him down, and if Billy Goff can make this a close-range brawl, I think he could beat Kinoshita here, but I think Kinoshita is too good, and I think making a second walk to the cage, he's going to have that awareness that he's not invincible. He'll pick his shots a little bit better and probably conserve some of his energy and not wear himself out in this fight in round 1. So, yeah, give me Kinoshita. Just think he's going to have a clean striking performance and probably knock out Billy Goff somewhere in this fight early. Another welterweight bout up next between Kenan Song and Rolando Bedoya. Another one of these matchups where you've got the veteran of the UFC. Kenan Song has been in the league for quite some time now, but he's coming off of back-to-back knockout losses and overall has not had the best UFC career for the Chinese striker in Kenan Song. Rolando Bedoya, on the other hand, is a 26-year-old Peruvian fighter fighting out of the shoot-to-box team in Brazil, where we've seen a lot of aggressive strikers come out of lately. And at 26 years old, he's making a second walk to the cage after really impressing in a loss against Khaos Williams by split decision earlier this year. Bedoya walked through all of Khaos Williams' strikes, and these are strikes that have put other UFC fighters out cold in one round. And Bedoya ate the strikes to his chin, laughed it off for 3 rounds, and answered back, actually outstriking Khaos Williams 149 to 130 in the significant strike totals over 3 rounds, and just came up very, very short in that decision that you could argue could have gone his way. But either way, Bedoya is not the cleanest striker, not the most technical, but he does wing very powerful hooks up close. That honestly, it was impressive that Khaos Williams ate the punches that Bedoya landed on him, but good kicking game as well, some explosive movements that you see out of those shoot-to-box guys. He will enter range with, Superman punches, flying knees, things like that from time to time. But overall, his boxing is his go-to. And, not the most powerful guy, honestly. He's only got 4 knockouts out of his 14 wins. But he's got good cardio, that's for sure, putting up triple-digit significant strikes over 3 rounds. And his best round was round 3, where he landed like over 60 on Khaos Williams. So, pretty good effort from Bedoya. It was impressive, but he's a minus 310 favorite now over Kenan Song, who's the plus 260 underdog. So, impressive as Bedoya's performance was against a guy like Khaos Williams in a debut, can't get behind this number on his money line because, his striking defense is pretty suspect. It's not that good. He's just not a real athletic guy. Like, his movements are sort of clunky. He's a flat-footed striker for the most part, but Kenan Song, at 33 years old, is a powerful striker that just looks to snipe that big right cross. That's really his moneymaker in the fight. But, he had his opportunity to land that on Ian Gary's chin last time out, dropping Ian Gary in round 1 and scaring all of us that had money on Ian Gary inside the distance. But Gary was able to put him out in round 3 and outwork him in that fight. And, you can outpace Kenan Song, you can out-wrestle him, and, you can certainly knock him out as well. He's been knocked out 4 times, and, his 3 wins in the UFC are knockouts, but they're over guys that have all been cut. Bobby Nash, Hector Aldana, who never had a win in the UFC, and even Callum Potter years ago, who I think retired after Kenan Song knocked him out. So, not the best wins out of his fights in the UFC, and it's just not. I don't see a lot of ways for Kenan Song to win. Like, he's got a knockout chance, as most people do in a fist fight, but against the durability of Bedoya, I just don't see it happening. So, give me Bedoya to win here. I want to say Bedoya wins inside the distance just because of how many times Song has been knocked out, but again, Bedoya not the most powerful guy. So, inside the distance will be my pick for this one, but I'm not really keen on this ending, in the overs or the unders of the time props here. Just give me Bedoya to win. Not getting anywhere near that minus 310 money line, though. Middleweight bout between 2 strikers, Chidi Njokuani and Mikhail Oleksieczjuk. You've got the very big for the weight class, 6'3", 80-inch reach of the former kickboxer Chidi Njokuani as he welcomes back the southpaw boxer with a lot of forward pressure and aggression in Mikhail Oleksieczjuk. And Mikhail is only 28 years old, and he's already had a very long career as a 205er in the UFC and recently switched last year to the middleweight division, knocking out Sam Alvey in round 1 and knocking out Cody Brundage with ground and pound at the end of last year as well. So both men are coming off of losses. For Chidi, it's a pretty lackluster performance in a decision loss to Albert Duraev, a wrestler. And you've got Mikhail Oleksieczjuk losing to a grappler as well, getting subbed in round 2 by Caio Bahayo. So both men, as strikers, they have the same weakness, right? Guys who are very strong takedown threats and grapplers. Mikhail Oleksieczjuk has been subbed like 4 times by OSP, Jimmy Crute, Of course, Caio Bahayo, who's the most recent loss. So both guys trying to get back in their winning ways, and I suspect this is going to be largely a striking battle. And in that regard, I'm going to take the kickboxer in Chidi Njokuani, who I think has a very big size and reach advantage for sure. He can really snipe Mikal as he advances with those long weapons. He's got the nice front kicks up the middle, front kicks to the face, high kicks, leg kicks. I mean, just the kicking game alone is going to give so much more advantage in the striking output and knockout potential for Chidi Njokuani. Now, I know Oleksieczjuk has only been knocked out one time, and it was like a decade ago, but he's been facing pretty soft competition in the UFC as far as his wins go. Aside from Shamil Gamzitov and Khalil Roundtree, those are some pretty good wins, but the other wins are pretty lackluster, honestly, and like who the names are. So, Chidi Njokuani is 2-2 in the UFC. He dropped the Duraev decision bout, and he dropped that fight where he started off very strong against Gregory Rodriguez last year and ended up gassing out and getting TKO'd in round 2. So both of those opponents I think are much better than Mikhail Oleksieczjuk, to be honest. Even Albert Duraev, just because of that wrestling threat that kind of kept Njokuani muzzled in that fight. But otherwise, Chidi Njokuani, he knocked out Marc-Andre Barriel very quickly with a punch in round 1. A guy who was notoriously durable and still is. I think he could do the same against Oleksieczjuk as he advances recklessly. Oleksieczjuk does have the better boxing, the combinations, and higher output with his aggression, but it's going to leave a lot of opportunities to be countered by the much bigger, more powerful man in Njokuani. So I'm kind of confused as to why Chidi is the slight underdog here. Minus 105, I took him on that money line for 1.05 units to win 1 in return. So give me Njokuani here. I am slightly worried that we have maybe coming off of back-to-back losses, he is a little gun-shy, but I think with that forward pressure of Oleksieczjuk, a smaller guy here, I think Chidi should be okay. Bantamweight bout up next between Toshiomi Kazama and Garrett Armfield, both guys making their second walk to the UFC octagon, and for Garrett Armfield, it's his first time at his natural weight class of bantamweight. We did see him make his debut on short notice against David Onama a while back, and he lost via round 2 arm triangle in that bout. As a big underdog, so it was kind of expected there. He got out-muscled in the clinch in round 2 after having a competitive round 1 where he held his own. But Garrett Armfield, largely a boxer. He's got a very good striking style about him, high output, high aggression, and a very fast starter. But Toshiomi Kazama is a grappler, a jiu-jitsu fighter who does not have the best striking, but he's also a fast starter, looks to close the distance with a very wide base, darts in range, tries to grab a hold of his opponents, clinch up and rip them to the mat, where he's got very strong top pressure and seeks submissions with authority. So it is a very good grappler versus striker dynamic here. Both guys looking to make contact early in round 1, and there's a good chance that one guy gets his way and finishes the fight. So Garrett Armfield, I have seen him struggle against this archetype of fighter before, even starting early and having success against guys and then getting tapped out in the next round. That happened to him against Matt Vogel on the regional scene, sort of against Ronnie Lawrence as well, but really Ronnie Lawrence outstruck him in rounds 1 and rounds 2 and then wrestled him in round 3. So, Garrett Armfield at 26 years old, an 8-3 record so far, still a lot to really prove in this spot against higher level competition. So that might be Kazama. He might be that next level of competition, but Kazama, he dropped his debut against Rinya Nakamura by an early round 1 knockout back in February. So no shame there. Nakamura, who we'll talk about later on, is quite talented. So for Kazama, I just think it's going to be, if he can't get this fight to the mat, he's going to be in serious danger of getting stopped within rounds 1 or rounds 2. But again, if he can make contact, if he can take this fight to the mat, then I think he dominates. And if Garrett Armfield slows down in rounds 2 and rounds 3, I think Kazama is going to have a big advantage there too. So I'm going to take the underdog in Toshiomi Kazama here. He is currently on the money line. We're looking at, let me try to find it here. Kazama is a plus 150 underdog. Armfield at the minus 175 favorite. I just think it should be a closer money line than that. I'm going to lean on the underdog here. I'm not betting this fight. I think there's something to be learned in this one, and we can bet it next time. But I think Kazama does have his way. He gets the fight to the mat, and he probably dominates to either a late submission or a decision win. Heavyweight bout up next between Waldo Cortes-Acosta and Lucas Brzeski, two younger heavyweights, newer to their UFC careers. You've got the 2-1 Waldo Cortes-Acosta and the 0-2 Lucas Brzeski, who has to find his first victory this weekend. Otherwise, probably might be the last we see of him. But Waldo Cortes-Acosta coming off of his first pro loss to Marcos Rogerio de Lima, and Lucas Brzeski coming off of a decision loss to Carl Williams. So both guys primarily strikers, and both guys were out-wrestled in their losses in their last performance. So, this is a pretty easy pick for me. I'm going to pick Waldo Cortes-Acosta just because he does have the higher output striking style, the better boxing technique, and he does have better cardio to last 3 rounds. That's pretty much the simple breakdown for this one, because Brzeski just shows that he can get caught over swinging, wasting his energy early, and then gassing himself out as the fight goes. So even though in his debut last August, he probably should have gotten the nod in that decision win against Martin Buday, still, I could see Waldo Cortes-Acosta just shoving that jab in his face, hitting him with jabs and overhand rights and 1-2-3s for the majority of 3 rounds, similar to what Cortes-Acosta did to Jared Vanderaa and Chase Sherman in his first 2 victories. So obviously I'm not seeing a lot of potential behind the future of Cortes-Acosta, a guy who gets his leg chopped up and beat up, a guy who got taken down by Rogerio de Lima, lost the decision to de Lima, who doesn't have great cardio himself. And obviously at 31 years old, the boxing skill he has, not a whole lot of power behind his strikes if he can't knock out, Vanderaa or Chase Sherman. So you should probably steamroll those guys if you want to be something at the higher level of the heavyweight division. But give me Cortes-Acosta to once again just box up Lucas Brzeski over 3 rounds, get better as the fight goes on and Brzeski slows, and get himself another third pretty unimpressive decision victory in the UFC. As far as the money line is concerned for this fight, minus 225 for Cortes-Acosta, the favorite, plus 190 for Lucas Brzeski, the underdog. I'm not really impressed enough by Cortes-Acosta to lay that price tag on him, although I do think he wins, and I think it is by decision. I'm not inclined to play the overs for this fight either, because it's pretty well favored to go the distance, or at least go over 2.5 rounds. But these are 2 big heavyweights, and even though Cortes-Acosta is not the most powerful, Brzeski's cardio is kind of a question mark to me. Could he survive to the scorecards, or could he kind of get TKO due to fatigue? Just really not so sure yet. So I'm going to take this fight to learn about these guys even further, and maybe we'll back one of them next time. Up next, another heavyweight bout where I'm just not impressed with either of these 2 guys, and probably won't be having my money on either one, but it's a pretty simple breakdown between Junior Tafa and Parker Porter. Now, Parker Porter, just a guy who's, again, just a middle-of-the-road generalist in the UFC's heavyweight division. His party trick is he can go 3 rounds and carry an output striking-wise over those 3 rounds. He can occasionally go for takedowns when his opponents are tired, and he does have some BJJ skills on the mat. So Parker Porter is now 38 years old, and he already got knocked out by Junior Tafa's brother, Justin Tafa, just a couple of fights ago. So pretty funny that these guys are squaring off against one another. It'll either be Parker Porter's revenge, or it'll be another Tafa brother highlight reel knockout early on. And I'm really leaning towards the Junior Tafa side here. He's a former Glory kickboxer, only 26 years old, and fairly new to professional mixed martial arts. But he did have that 20-5 kickboxing record where he got 16 knockouts out of those 20 wins. And he's a pretty big guy, too. He's 6'3". He'll have that height advantage. He'll be at a reach disadvantage according to the metrics here, but 252 pounds, he'll be right up there with the weight of Parker Porter. So 26-year-old guy, a slicker mover, a guy with more power in his hands and feet. I'm going to go with Junior Tafa to find the counter strike on Parker Porter, who does not have the most clean or polished striking, and he can really leave his chin out there as he rushes in for the blitzing combination. So, yeah, give me Junior Tafa for a round 1 knockout, but, I would not be surprised at all if Parker Porter somehow survives and slips all of the punches of Junior Tafa. And, Junior Tafa's cardio in an extended fight where he's striking, still kind of a mystery, right? Like, he lost his debut to Mo Usman, who's a far superior wrestler to Parker Porter, but Junior Tafa showed that he's got pretty decent takedown defense. He was not taken down against the cage in round 1. It took until round 2 for Mo Usman to finally land the takedowns, and every time that this fight was on the feet between those 2 men, Junior Tafa was landing some pretty good punches. He does have nice uppercuts, wings his hooks pretty well. And I think he will be able to land on the chin of Parker Porter here, who is 38 years old, not the best durability either. He's been knocked out 4 times. So, yeah, give me Junior Tafa to win. Round 1 knockout, but where the money line is at, I think it's like minus 150. Junior Tafa plus 130 or so for Parker Porter. Just not really wanting to pay the price in Junior Tafa here. I'll watch him one more time before I maybe invest in him next time. Women's flyweight bout up next between Taila Santos and Erin Blanchfield. A very important, pivotal matchup here for the division and the future of who's going to challenge next for the title here. And, many call that to be Erin Blanchfield, who's 5-0 in the league, has a bright future in the UFC at 24 years old, and has been molded by high-level competition. All of her pro fights were in Invicta or in the UFC. And she's a very high-level submission grappler with budding skills in the striking realm as well. So, coming off of that successful round 2 submission win over Jessica Andrade in February, it was supposed to be Taila Santos in that spot, but Santos had some visa issues with her team, so it was not to be that night. The last time we saw Taila Santos in the cage was 14 months ago, where she challenged for the belt against Valentina Shevchenko and came up very, very closely short in that split decision loss that night. So, starting off very strong in rounds 1 through 3 with her own grappling, Taila Santos had Valentina in all sorts of submission trouble in a couple of spots there, but Shevchenko was able to get out of those spots, saved by the bell both times. So, 4-2 in the UFC for Santos, 5-0 in the UFC for Blanchfield. Youth advantage for Blanchfield. I would say a grappling advantage for her as well, as far as options of how she wants to get the fight to the ground. Santos usually getting that body lock takedown, and Blanchfield sometimes, shooting double legs, grabbing single legs, body locking herself. So I think Blanchfield has more weapons in the grappling realm. She's even the better fight ender as far as finishes go in the UFC. But Santos, I think, has the much better striking. It's more refined, more powerful. And, that's something that Santos, I believe, started off her career in, was the kickboxing, and gained those grappling skills later. Whereas the opposite is true for Erin Blanchfield. So, yeah, I mean, it makes a very close matchup, because where I think Blanchfield is the better technical wrestler and grappler, Santos I believe to be physically stronger, especially in the clinch positions on the cage. So, who's going to be able to, employ their game plan the best? Who's going to end up in top position on the mat? I think it is Blanchfield. I think Blanchfield will just have that hunger. She'll have the ability to show another evolution of her game at this point, still only 24 years old. Whereas Santos, coming off of the tragic, very close, heartbreaking loss in a title challenge last year, and she's had some drama outside of the cage as well. If you saw last August, a lot of her team parted ways with her. Even like family members were saying that she wasn't paying them what they were due for their training and coaching fees. So she's been dealing with some court stuff outside of the UFC, probably partially why she was not able to make the appearance back in February. So, yeah, I mean, I think Blanchfield is still going up. She's got the momentum on her side as well, still improving at 24. So I'm going to take her to win this fight. As far as the money line goes, minus 140 for Blanchfield, plus 120 for Taila Santos. I'd say that's about right, because there's still a lot to learn. I could pick apart both of their resumes in the UFC so far. No shame and nothing to pick apart with Santos in her title fight, but other than that, she's taking girls like Roxanne Modafferi to decision, taking Molly McCann to decision, whereas Erin Blanchfield is finishing a lot of her opponents, but still, 2023 version of a short-notice Jessica Andrade. Not the best against a grappler in Blanchfield, and same with Molly McCann last November as well. McCann, largely a striker, kind of overhyped. So there are spots where I still have to learn about both women here, but I'm impressed by both of them. I'm looking forward to the fight, but I'm going to take Blanchfield to win, just being younger, hungrier, and still improving. Bantamweight bout up next between Rinya Nakamura and Fernie Garcia, and this is a pretty easy and quick fight to break down. This is one of the biggest favorites on the card. Rinya Nakamura, the Japanese freestyle wrestling champion, and a very powerful striker and finisher in MMA. He's minus 800, the favorite. Fernie Garcia can be had at plus 550, the underdog. So you've got Rinya Nakamura, who, like I said, a very strong wrestler, world champion, now turned his sights to mixed martial arts as a pro. He's only been a pro for a few years, since 2021, but he's already got 5 knockouts, 1 submission, 1 decision under his belt, and he's won the UFC's road to the UFC tournament earlier this year, beating Toshiomi Kazama, who we spoke about on this card earlier up the prelims. Now they bring in Fernie Garcia, who is 0-2 in the UFC. He just lost to a wrestler in Brady Heastand last time out. And Fernie Garcia is largely just like a boxer himself, just a one-dimensional guy in mixed martial arts, capable of throwing and landing decently accurate punches, even when retreating backwards, which is a good trait. He's not a bad boxer at all, and he's never been finished in mixed martial arts, and he does have a 10-3 record, but those 3 were all decisions, and they were all losses largely to wrestlers, right? I mentioned the Brady Heastand one recently, but also in the LFA, the one loss that he had by decision there was to a guy named Cody Freeman, and the losing round that was the defining round of that fight, he got taken down and controlled. Even one of his split decision wins back in his pre-UFC career, it was only a split because he got taken down towards the end of the fight and controlled. So a guy like Nakamura just seems to be on a higher level of athletic potential, different speed, power behind this guy's strikes, and his submission potential on the ground is really strong as well. It's always interesting seeing these Japanese fighters and the Asian fighters go, instead of going like Kimura on the mat, they go key lock, and that's the one submission that Rinya Nakamura has over Gogun Guzman. He got that key lock in round 1. He could do the same here against Fernie Garcia, but I think he knocks out Garcia, to be honest. Just snipes him off with like a big left straight or something like that on the feet. But I will say at minus 800, kind of a crazy price tag on the money line against a guy who has never been finished and has way more professional experience. But give me Rinya Nakamura nonetheless. I'd say looking at round like a Nakamura under 1.5 combined parlay, if you can do that same game parlay, or look for Rinya Nakamura in round 1. The odds are probably still going to be crazy, so this might just be a pass spot for me. But yeah, Nakamura I think is the clear pick here to win by round 1 finish. Featherweight bout up next between Giga Chikadze and Alex Bruce Leroy Caceres, and this is a tough fight to break down, not pick-wise, but just hard to have to go against my guy Bruce Leroy Caceres here. I love seeing this guy fight, and he's been one of my favorite guys in the roster since he made his debut about, like 12, 13 years ago at this point. So 35 years old as a featherweight now. Alex Caceres is a very flashy striker with very slick submission skills that we see from time to time, but he's light on his feet, southpaw striker, more of a point fighter from the outside, darting in and out of range. And this guy does not have much power, though, is the problem over the years. Not really respect-earning power, not the best boxing with his hands, and the only knockout he had was a pretty recent one against Julian Erosa, who's proven to have pretty much no chin left at this point. Giga Chikadze has been off, very powerful kickboxer, but he's been off for a year and a half now since his beatdown at the hands of Calvin Kattar over 5 rounds and a loss. But it's through no fault of his own he's been laid off. He had potential matchups against Sadiq Youssef, Brian Ortega, and even the Korean Zombie himself that all fell through due to injuries on their side. Giga Chikadze has been injury-free training for the past year and a half, according to him. So, yeah, last January in 2022, Calvin Kattar was able to capitalize on a missed kick and a slip from Giga Chikadze, gain that top control time in round 1, kind of wear down the gas tank of Giga Chikadze, land some powerful strikes on him. And Calvin Kattar's a durable, powerful boxer that stalked him down and gave him no space to breathe in that fight. So, pretty impressive victory for Calvin Kattar there. But other than that, Chikadze, I think, has Alex Caceres covered in this matchup. He's a more powerful, more polished, accurate kickboxer, and he's got the boxing with his hands that Bruce Leroy really lacks. So I think Chikadze is even more durable in this fight, and he's a guy who's going to be just dishing out more damage and could potentially find a finish on Caceres. I wouldn't be surprised, but Caceres is oddly durable. Like, he doesn't eat damage that well, but he recovers very quickly and gets back on his feet when he gets knocked down. And he's only been knocked out one time. I think that was Francisco Rivera years ago, which was a very fast round 1 finish. I think a big left hook knocked out Caceres that night. So I give the striking power to Giga, the boxing to Giga, the speed and durability I give to Giga Chikadze here, so I'm going to take him to win. The only worry in this is that Alex Caceres could capitalize on like a slipped kick, jump on the back of Giga and choke him out. That's always a possibility, but as far as the offensive wrestling, he's not a very active wrestler as Bruce Leroy. He would probably just jump on his back from a standing position or capitalize on something like I mentioned. So Giga Chikadze, yeah, I think he's the clear pick here. Minus 230 on the money line. I put 2.3 units to win one on Chikadze. Light heavyweight bout in the co-main event of the fight card, a rematch between Anthony Smith and Ryan Spann. And this is a rematch of a fight that happened just 2 years ago where Anthony Smith was able to get a victory in round one over Ryan Spann, catch him over swinging, hit him with some shots, and end up finishing the fight on the mat by a rear naked choke. So not much has really changed since that original matchup a couple years back. But right now, Anthony Smith is the plus 110 underdog, and Ryan Spann is the minus 130 slight favorite. Now, in the original matchup, I believe Anthony Smith was a moderate favorite in that fight, like a minus 150 or so, if memory serves me correct. But right now, Anthony Smith, 35 years old, Ryan Spann, 31. And they're both big guys. You know, Ryan Spann will have a slight physical advantage here at 6'5", just slightly, more muscular and physically imposing. And he's a big, brawling striker. He can start off kind of technical, but when he gets excited, when he chases the kill, he is kind of a brawler with a lot of openings he leaves defensively. But he does have submission potential as well. He's got a good front choke series. He's got a good guillotine, and he's tall enough to usually, sink that in from a standing position on a lot of opponents. So, yeah, I mean, they're both finishers as well. Even though Anthony Smith is more of the technical Muay Thai striker, he's a guy who's got extremely good skills on the mat as a BJJ black belt. So I think the advantage for both areas of the game go to Anthony Smith. He also has a lot more experience. So I'm not really sure why this guy is the underdog here, especially since Ryan Spann is coming off of a submission loss in round one to Nikita Krylov earlier this year. So Ryan Spann struggles against that type of opponent. He got choked out by Anthony Smith a couple of years ago. He got choked out by a triangle choke by Nikita Krylov, and I don't see why that same fate can't meet him once again in this matchup. I think Ryan Spann has a very strong potential to win in round one. His last three bouts, all round one stoppages. Dominic Reyes by knockout, Kutalaba by that guillotine I mentioned, and also Misha Serkinov by knockout. But likewise, Anthony Smith, his last wins all came in round one as well. Over Ryan Spann, over Jimmy Crute from leg kicks, and over Devin Clark by a round one triangle choke. So both guys are finishers. Both guys have a history of not seeing the scorecards very often. In fact, Anthony Smith has finished 34 of his 36 wins, whereas Ryan Spann has finished 18 of his 21 wins. And both guys are finished in the large majority of their losses. So I'm liking the under 1.5. I've bet that here at minus 170 for 1 unit on that. So that was on Bovada. I think that still exists right now. So I think it ends early, and I think it is going to be Anthony Smith as an underdog that's got a good chance of pulling this off. Ryan Spann has, the knockout potential, but so far at light heavyweight, Anthony Smith has been pretty durable and taken damage well. I think he takes damage better than Ryan Spann does. So Ryan Spann probably going to start brawling. He's going to get hit. He's going to go down. Anthony Smith's going to jump on his back and get another rear naked choke. In round one. So going to cash that under 1.5 either way in this bout. I don't see seeing the scorecards or even past 7.5 minutes. And I think Anthony Smith will get his hand raised as a dog in this bout. Okay, we made it all the way to the main event of the fight card. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, and let's break into this fight. At featherweight, potentially 5 rounds of action between the former champion Max Holloway as he takes on Chan Sung Jung, the Korean Zombie. And the money line is minus 800 for the former champion Max Holloway, plus 550 the underdog price on the Korean Zombie. And the Korean Zombie we haven't seen in quite some time. It's been about, 14 or 15 months, whatever that was, last April of 2022, where he came up short and got TKO'd in round 4 against Alexander Volkanovski. Really no shame there for the Korean Zombie. That was a tough matchup for him, and even his durability let him down, and the referee sort of mercy stopped that fight after the second or third time he got knocked down from Volkanovski. So Likewise, Max Holloway has not been able to beat Alexander Volkanovski either, so they have that in common. If your name is not Alexander Volkanovski, you're not beating Max Holloway in the past 4 or 5 years, right? I mean, we're going back. Those are his last 3 wins, all of them decision losses to Volkanovski at the weight class. And if your name is not Volkanovski, you're not beating Max Holloway at featherweight for the past 10 years. So it's a tall order for the Korean Zombie, who I can't find any ways where he's better than Max Holloway other than the early knockout potential. Just that raw power early in the fight, that definitely goes to the Korean Zombie, who's knocked out Frankie Edgar in round 1. He's knocked out Mark Hominick in like 7 seconds of their fight. Dennis Bermudez, Hanato Moicano, even Dustin Poirier years ago got flying kneed, uppercutted, and then put in a Darce choke. So you could even give the submission potential, I would say, to the Korean Zombie as well. But those are really the only advantages he has, and nobody's finishing Max Holloway. Nobody's ever knocked him out or knocked him down. So there's just not a lot of ways to win left on the table for the Korean Zombie, who I think is going to get outpointed and outvolumed for 25 minutes of this fight. You look at Max Holloway in this fight, minus 800, not really playable on the money line, but you want to see, how does he win? When does he win? Does he win inside the distance? Do we have a performance for Max Holloway like against Anthony Pettis, for example, where he melts him with strikes to the body? Is the Korean Zombie going to have a performance like his last fight against Volkanovski, where he gets TKO'd in the later parts of the championship rounds of the fight? Max Holloway has had 8 straight fights go all 5 rounds, all 25 minutes. In fact, his last 14 have all gone over 2.5 rounds. So the first bet that I placed in this fight was the over 2.5 at minus 225. I put 2 units on that. I also took 1 unit, which is a riskier bet, but I put 1 unit on Max Holloway by decision at plus 165. Now, when FanDuel drops the 4-5 and decision prop for Max Holloway, assuming that's around minus 130, I may take a sprinkle at that as well, just in case he does finish the Korean Zombie in those championship rounds of 4 or 5. So if it's an early stoppage, I lose all 3 bets. If it ends in championship rounds, I could win 2 of 3 bets. And if it goes all the way to decision, like the last 8 of Max Holloway's fights have gone, I would win all 3 of those bets, the over 2.5, the 4-5 decision, and the Holloway by decision. So that's how I intend to play this from a betting perspective. I think it's a complete domination from Max Holloway, a 50-43, 50-44 decision win. Maybe he loses the early part of the fight, like a round 1. Maybe that does go to some big moments that come from the Korean Zombie, but even that, I just think Holloway's boxing is on a different level. He's going to have a small size advantage here. Max Holloway is 5'11", with a long reach, still only 31 years old. The Korean Zombie, 36 at this point, whose better days are behind him. So, no surprise here. I'm not calling the upset for the Korean Zombie. Wouldn't be the worst thing in the world from a fan perspective, though. I love the Korean Zombie, and he's had epic wars from the WEC days against Leonard Garcia all the way into his UFC career so far. So, I'm going to go with Max Holloway here to put on a classic 25-minute Max Holloway boxing performance and get his hand raised by unanimous decision. Okay, there you have it, you guys. All 13 fights broken down for UFC Singapore, Holloway versus the Korean Zombie. Can't wait for this fight card. There's a lot of matchups I think could go either way, and I can't wait to see how it shakes out. So hit the like, hit the subscribe. Join me on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Central Time for my live stream with Johnny K. Picks this week, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Cheers.